Hi, Vinny. Thanks for having me here. I'm Bas de Vos, and I'm VP for IFS Labs. And today I want to share a little bit of what IFS Labs is, what we do, and why we actually help IFS achieve our goals in a couple of years down the road.
Bas, I was so impressed with the show floor at Unleashed a couple of weeks ago, your event, that I'm really looking forward to your presentation.
Yeah, thanks. And what was very clear and what we talked about at Unleashed, right, is that IFS Labs is very much about the topic of innovation. So for me to introduce and talk about IFS Labs, I actually should take a step back and talk a little bit about what innovation is and what innovation means to IFS, right? And in the end, it's not just about innovation, it's about the topic of embedded innovation. And what does that mean? And again, I'll come back to the topic of innovation, but it's already important to realize that just innovation for the sake of innovation is not really innovation. For us, innovation should be embedded in our product suites so that our customers can maximum leverage whatever they get out of it. It's part of the suite. It gets updated in an evergreen approach, and it's basically part of a seamless end user experience. But if we just focus on the topic of innovation for a second, right, and we focus on what innovation is, then I think it's very important, of course, you need to have ideas, right? If you don't have any ideas, then you don't have any innovation. But in the end, that's not enough. Just having ideas, you see that a lot of innovation land, right? We have an idea, we talk about the idea, we talk about the vision, but then what, right? In the end, an idea only becomes actually innovation if it becomes reality, if it actually happens, if it actually makes it into product, and if it actually gets delivered to the customers. And then we end up at the third part of innovation, and that is that it needs to add value to us as IFS, but also to our customers and to our partners. And this is my personal definition of innovation, and there's probably a million other ones out there. But whenever I talk within the IFS organization, where my team really functions as innovation evangelists, right, innovation advocates, then I always talk to the other teams about these three topics. It's not enough to just have an idea on do something better, smarter, more effective. It actually needs to add value to our customers, and it needs to become reality. And
I've been writing about innovation for a decade. So my definition is a little bit broader. It's not just what happens in the product, it's what happens in channels, it's what happens in business models, right? So, but all these three things need to happen. It can't just be an idea. It has to be executed, and it has to add value. That's a great summary you have here.
Yeah, exactly right. And when I say reality, right, in the end, of course, I'm completely agree with you, right? Even if it ends up in our product, it needs to have the next step as well, right? Our customers actually need to use it as well, else they can't drive the value of it. So I completely agree with you. And I think it's always important to focus on these three. And this is not a secret to you, right? But in the end, this is actually very difficult because a lot of the people get stuck on one of these three topics. Right? So if you then sort of go back and you would say, okay, if you get stuck in these three topics, right, there's sort of three areas where you can get stuck. And the first sort of area where you can get stuck, the first driver behind innovation almost is fear. And this basically happens when we're doing things, when we have systems that are doing things for real, right? It's actually already creating value for people today. But then suddenly the environment might change, right? The old ways stop working. And basically, if you don't have any new ideas, you're left with fear. And I think a lot of people have talked about the corona pandemic over and over again. So it starts to become a little bit boring in a sense. But it's also a very good example of what happened. If we look at the area of remote assistance, remote working, social distancing, if in that world you suddenly didn't have any ideas on how to resolve that, well, you were, to put it in a mild word, right? You had a little bit of a problem, right? So you first need to have ideas to resolve this. And this is something where my team, where IFS Labs actually helps the IFS organization. We come up with new ideas. It's that simple. We explore what's possible. We talk to customers. We talk to analysts like yourself, right? We talk to our ecosystem, and we come up with ideas. But then the second thing sort of happens in this as well. And that's what I call the area of fantasy. Now you have this idea of solving a particular problem, but you don't have a way of making it reality yet, right? And this is where a lot of people get stuck. They have this great idea. They see the problem it can solve, but they don't have a way of making it reality yet, right? They don't have a way of realizing their idea. And again, this is sort of the second area where my team, where IFS Labs, help the IFS organization. Whether the idea originated in my team or not is a little bit irrelevant at this point. But in the R&D organization, there's ideas, and sometimes they're in a space that we find it very difficult to see how we could achieve them. And that's where my team comes into play again, and we're trying to help the organization resolve this issue. And that naturally leads into the sort of third area, and that's what I call frustration. And frustration is often the case when you have this new great technology, it solves a technical problem, but you don't have an accompanying business model yet. How are you going to monetize it? How are you going to actually make it deliver value to your customers? And how can you convince your customer that it's going to make value? And how do you pick the right use case to actually deliver in this area of technical expertise? And that's the third hurdle in the innovation process. And again, this is where my team often comes into play as well, right? We see this technology, we know kind of how we can use it in the product, but how are we going to monetize it? Is there any appetite? What's the landscape look like? What's the use case we could actually drive our customers' value with, right? And these three come all together. And well, this is not really a surprise then. If you go back to my definition list of innovation, an idea that adds value and actually happens, that's really driving these three triggers, right? And so if we look at my team and at the IFS,
Boss, the second one, frustration. I find a lot of software vendors, technology is bigger, software vendors, so many vertical opportunities, and most of them feel safe in horizontal areas. So they'll keep investing in their ledgers and their payables and their HR, procurement, but they want to look at operational areas. They want to look at customer-facing areas. So that's been one frustration of mine with the software industry is they play it too safe. When this, when you tell them, hey, look, why are you not exploring these opportunities? They say, well, there's only 100 units I can sell there. This one I can sell 10,000 units. Yeah, but there are 100 other vendors who are trying to get the same 10,000 units, right? So that's a constant challenge with software.
Yeah, very recognizable, right? And it's one we run into at IFS as well. It is like, what's the area that you want to extend your footprint? What's the area that you want to add something to it? And that's also an area where my team plays a role, right? Because as you say, what's the area where you can actually deliver most value to your customers? What's the actual use case in that? And sometimes that is, as you say, right, it's about adding some core capabilities in the areas that you already serve, but it might as very well be something that is a little bit more out of the box and a little bit more exotic in that, and extending the footprint of your solution. So yeah, I agree with that. It's good, right, that we agree on the definition of innovation. It would be an awkward conversation if you and I would be completely at the opposite spectrums of this area. So as I said, right, and this is a little bit what IFS Labs does, and I typically try to put this in perspective of a timeline as well, because people ask me, okay, are you working on things that are going to be 10 years from now or 5 years from now, or whatever you do in labs, can we expect that 6 months from now? And it depends all a little bit, right? Because and this is the McKinsey 3 Horizons of Innovation. You're probably familiar with them, but there's many other similar models out there as well. In the end, what you see is all of those models, they basically talk about the different sort of horizons of innovation. And some things are a little bit more blue sky thinking and further out. And then there's the area that's what McKinsey calls new innovation, which is basically, another word, adjacent innovation, right? And this is where you're starting to incorporate your long-term version. Technology solutions might be known, but not yet to the right use case for your customers, right? And then you have Horizon 1, which is really something you can deliver in the next 6 to 12 months, incremental innovation, close it home. And our purpose in Labs is sort of take these three hurdles that we just discussed, and over these horizons help drive into the product. Things that are 3 years out might have a couple of more hurdles than things that can be achieved in the next development cycle. And it's our job to make sure that we can deliver in the next development cycle as much as possible of the new innovative use cases. And that means starting without thinking what's going to happen 3, 4, 5 years from now, and start driving that forward through time to the point that we can actually deliver that in product. So a typical,
yeah. I mean, a philosophical question, because Steve Jobs' view was, don't ask your customers. You know, if you ask your customers, they will keep you grounded in too much reality, right? On the other hand, like you say, if you're too far out, it could be years and years of development and acceptance by the customer base. So how do you balance the two?
Well, yeah, and a fair point, and this is exactly what I want to achieve with this picture, right? I think there is some sort of a balance in between, right? As you say, if you listen too much to your customers' day-to-day needs, yeah, you don't really escape today's reality, right? At the same time, I don't think it's IFS's role in the world to start thinking about, you know, what quantum computing is going to do 10 years from now, right? Of course, we in labs monitor those type of developments, and we monitor that, and we watch it, and we try to pick up the right timing for us to really get involved in those things. But there is this sweet spot out there, right? There's this sweet spot out there where we really can influence what's going to happen in the product, and at the same time, that's far enough out there to actually make a difference. And for me, that sweet spot sits somewhere between 2 to 3 years, 3 to 4 years out. So if you look at the technologies that are coming up in that sort of time frame, if you start working on them now and you start thinking about the use cases and what they can mean to your customers now, you're actually going to be right on time in delivering some of those capabilities into product. So let's say the 2 to 3 to 4 year horizon is for me is really the sweet spot. But in the end, it's a little bit of a balance, and you make choices. Sometimes you work with something that's way more concrete, and sometimes you work with something that's a little bit more abstract, but it's a balance. And I think very important, you should not be afraid to fail. So it could also very well be that you pick up a topic today, and 6 months or a year from now, you're saying, this is not going to go anywhere, or at least not anywhere quick enough. And therefore you park that for a couple of years. That could happen as well, of course.
So let me ask you, your biggest customer must be Darren. How often does he call you and say, Bas, I want you to work on this right away?
Occasionally. So that happens occasionally, but on the other hand, I actually think that we as an R&D leadership team, we have quite a good outlook on the sort of technologies that are on there, and we communicate that more than or often enough with him, right? So I think that there's a healthy balance between those type of things. If we do our job well early enough, the answer should already be there if Darren asked them, right?
You know, just to a little bit of a contrast, I find Mark Benioff at Salesforce, he'll go into customers, he'll listen to one of their needs, and I'm pretty sure he goes back and he says, work on this right away, because it becomes part a new feature within 3 or 4 months. So they seem to have a different philosophy there. I don't know how they keep him. He must be, you know, full of ideas, and it's like, leave me alone for a while.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah. And anyway, so sort of back to this point, right? This is really the mission of IFS Labs. And if we start segueing a little bit into IFS Unleashed, right? Then I was sort of I was conflicted a little bit putting the next slide in, but I wanted to get your opinion on this a little bit as well in this, right? And that's a topic I call bridging the gap. A lot of the technologies out there and a lot of the use cases I see around the technologies, for me, can all be put in some sort of a mega basket that is about bridging the gap. It's about bridging the gap between the physical and the digital world, right? The closer we can get that gap in both the accurateness of data and the timeliness of data, the speed of which we can get data between the physical and the digital world, right? The more efficient and effective we're going to be as an organization. And a lot of the sort of technologies we've seen out there in the past couple of years, right? IoT, location tracking, augmented reality, AGVs, geofencing, and even our mobile phone, right? A couple of decades ago. They're all sort of, they have their main use case around closing this gap, right? And I think a lot of the work we do in IFS Labs actually addresses this gap.
And this,
of course, there's always the exception.
This is what I really liked about your shop floor, your show floor, right? Because you were bringing the digital and virtual much closer than a lot of other vendors have, events. But it's mostly partner booths and so on. There wasn't enough. They don't have enough of this physical and virtual together. SAP does a good job with that. A couple of other vendors are starting to do this, but this is where I think you have a huge advantage. Keep doing what you're doing. I would only add a couple of things here. Probably a little more space-related stuff, so drones. Redefine the definition of location tracking to.
Yeah, I agree with you. There is much more. These were just 10 random examples in that sense, right? Drones, AGVs. There's many more technologies out there that really address this gap. Even in a technology development like 5G, right? It's about getting data quicker, more data between the device in the field, and whether the device is an IoT sensor or a mobile phone or a laptop. To the server that sits, or to the cloud, right, to the internet, that sits somewhere else. It's really about getting your data there quicker, more accurate, right, and driving more automation in that, in getting the data from A to B and back from B to A. And I think a lot of the innovation we talked about at Unleashed is really, as it is, this sort of like mega bucket sitting behind it as well, right? So we then kind of segue into Unleashed, and there's a bunch of stuff we've shown at Unleashed. I selected this slide from the keynote that I delivered there, because I actually think it tells this end-to-end story. And as you say, right, we demonstrated this both at the main stage show. And if people are interested, the actual keynote can be found online, and they can look at that again. It's a 20-minute, 30-minute session. So maybe you want to play the entire video, but
I'll embed that in the blog post.
Yeah. And people can jump into that, right? And we showed this at the shop floor as well, where we actually had a physical asset on the shop floor that was interacting with IFS Cloud on all of these areas. And as said, right, I'm going to pick one of them out there. But I also like to put things a little bit in perspective as well. So the scenario we talked about there was a scenario where we say, okay, you can inspect an aircraft door using some of the new capabilities we put into our flight line maintenance apps, with help of LiDAR. Really, okay, getting the physical data, the actual door picture with the measurements on there, and putting that into system. I've shown something around using interactive displays in the warehouse, and I'll come back to that in my next section of this webinar. We talked about then that door being repaired in a factory, where we showcased our connected factory capabilities using MES capabilities, IoT, asset performance management in the factory. And again, right, this is about having the data in the virtual world, IFS Cloud, and the physical world operating as seamlessly together and as autonomously together as possible. I talked about asset performance management on wind turbines, a segue from that. And again, it's about bridging that gap, right? Taking the data from the wind turbines, using it, and immediately generating trends and anomalies on the data that you received. And I ended with a scenario around intelligent knowledge-based search, basically using modern technologies to correlate and associate data that sits both in IFS Cloud as outside by IFS Cloud together to provide the end user with the answer to the knowledge question he has in the most accurate way possible. Conscious of time, what I want to focus on is on interactive display enablement. That's the ePaper technology that we showcased both on the floor as well as on main stage. And this is all based, and the reason I like this example is because it's very much today. We talked about this 2 to 3 year horizon, and of course, in a lot of cases, my team is already working on something that's going to happen in 3 years. But in the end, when do our customers need something that is today? And this is a technology. These are use cases that a lot of our customers can actually leverage today and gain a lot of efficiencies in that. ePaper, we all know it from our Amazon Kindle book. It has moved into retail. It has moved into public transportation. Not sure if you saw at Miami Airport, Vinny, that the actual signage for the public transportation was ePaper technology as well. But you also see use cases coming into the supply chain. And the interesting part about ePaper as a technology is that it right slam dunk sits in a sweet spot between paper and more high-end technologies like tablets and TV screens and iPhones and you name it. It's cheaper than the high-end, but it doesn't require you reprinting your labels all the time, right? So it is digital. It closes that gap of the data right there, but it's way cheaper than the high-end devices. And more important, they're more energy friendly, right? So you put a battery in there and they last 1 to 3 years, depending on the intensity of the usage I have. And at the same time, they do give you some capabilities in having small, simple interactions. And just to give you some examples of how these use cases, if they're applicable to our customers, short answer is yes. I can just write down 10 use cases, but I've got material for another 20 of use cases where this can actually benefit the right customer. If you think about, well, IFS is originally a Swedish company, right? Another Swedish company is IKEA. We have all been to IKEA, and one of the things you do is you want to buy this closet, or you want to buy this cupboard from IKEA, and you get this list of articles that you actually need to pick up in the self-service warehouse, and you walk in, and then you're like, oh, where do I need to go? Which aisle? Well, imagine that as you enter the warehouse, right, you get assigned a color, purple, and you walk into the warehouse, and at the different heads of the aisle and in the aisles, the labels of the areas where you have to pick your warehouse starts blinking purple. You walk over on the digital label that says, you know, Vinny, pick 2 of these items, right? You pick them, you hit the label, you walk away, and it's immediately put to your cash register as well because you picked it, right? Well, this is something that we can relate to in a consumer world, but you can imagine that you can do this in a business warehouse as well, right? Pick by light, we call that. But you can also think about stock expiration or recall notifications, right? Taking one of those labels and put a big red cross on it if the actual material is expired or has been recalled by the OEM, improving the quality because nobody's going to pick it anymore if there's a big red cross on the label. And of course, there's all kinds of sizes and devices of these devices out there that our customers could leverage and driving these type of use cases around. Just 3 examples of how that could look, right? I already mentioned that. You could use this for your dynamic handling units, updating the information on your handling unit all the time. Just plain automatic bin location information or stock recall notifications. And these are the type of use cases that are actually very easy for our customers to leverage.
And some of the devices are $50. I mean, it's amazing how cheap they've become.
They're really cheap, right? Ranging between $10 and $75, depending on the sizing and the amount that you're going to buy. It's not comparable in prices to ordinary Android or other types of devices. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's easy to see, even with just this short explanation, that there's benefits in sustainability, in efficiency, in quality, and user experience. But one thing that a lot of customers ask me about innovation in the warehouse is, yeah, but wait a minute. Most of my aren't my warehouse employees going to wear augmented reality glasses a year from now? Or don't I have robotized my warehouse a year from now? Or I'm going to have IoT sensors everywhere. And then my short answer to that is, typically, really? If you're going to outfit all your warehouse employees with augmented reality glasses within the next year, please contact me because I would like to collaborate with you, right? You must be leading the pack. Because reality is that a lot of the technologies, especially in the warehouse, are going to take a couple of years to mature. And the cool thing about interactive displays is that it's very mature technology because it comes out of a different industry, out of retail. It's already mature, it's already achievable, and I call this, it's a simple and valuable innovation for our customers. It's simple for our IFS customers because of the way that we look at embedding this innovation in the product. We're basically saying the customer needs to have choice on the outside, because the customer might, use devices this size or devices this size. The outside is going to be different, and maybe they want to go with a different vendor than the one that we have tested with. Or maybe they're going to have different information on there because, for one customer, lot number might be very important. And for another customer, it might be part number that's very important, right? But in the end, the customer needs to have choice on the outside. Yeah. That means that we need to allow our customer to tailor the business processes in IFS Cloud to their needs. And we're doing that by using our business process automation capability inboard, and the customer can basically configure the integration into this technology. We've sent them example workflows on how they could do this, the most common use cases, right? And they can just take them and tailor that to their own needs. But what we have to do as IFS is something I call enable on the inside. We have to make sure that the inside, the core engine of IFS Cloud, is capable of integrating to this technology. We need to make sure that there's a hardware vendor agnostic integration methodology, that there is a way of doing device mapping, that there are dedicated events and triggers for ePaper updates. It might sound very simple, right? Just whenever a bin location updates, send a signal out to the bin location label. But it might be that there's a database transaction that triggers 10 upgrades or 10 updates. Do you really want to send 10 events to the label, or do you want to wait until the 10th event and then send something to the label, right? So those type of choices.
Bas, this is where your ecosystem management, your partner management also needs to evolve, right? Because a lot of vendors are still stuck on their systems integrator ecosystems. You need so many more channel players that can bring simple technologies, right? And work with you. It may require some adjustment on their part, some adjustment on your part, make it seamless for the customer. So
yeah, I agree, right? Our goal at IFS is making it as seamless as possible for the customer. And that means in some cases working with our partners, some cases that means that we as R&D have to upgrade and enable the inside to work in the best way possible. I said simple and valuable, and that's the second thing that we have done there as IFS Labs, right? We said before we would embark on this journey and recommend this technology to our customer and enable the insight and create the tailoring options, etc. We actually went out to a bunch of our customers, in this case 3 of our customers, and we did a business value engineering case with them, in which we would sort of detail every single business process and identify all the benefits that this new technology, the use cases that are supported by this technology would have, and start identifying all the benefits in there and created a business case around it. And based on 3 to 5 use cases, and I said already there's like 10 use cases at least for every customer, but based on 3 to 5 use cases at these 3 customers, we learned that there, with a 5 to 400K investment, there is a NPV of 150 to 500K US dollars with a 1.4 years ROI. And for us, as IFS, that was the adds value checkbox, right? Yes, we have this great idea around doing something with ePaper. We figured out how it works, right? We actually made it happen. But is it going to add value to our customer? And the short answer is, let's check that out with our customers. And that's something we did. And that's something we came back with. That's actually a sort of the conclusion almost, right? Because this is a great example of a topic that of an idea. Can we do something with ePaper? We see it in retail. We started this thinking about 2 years ago, where we saw this technology coming up. We spent some time actually figuring out how difficult is it going to be. What do we need to do in product to make this as easy as possible for our customers? We made it happen because it got released in IFS Cloud 22R2 during IFS Unleashed when we launched our latest version. And to prove to our customers that it actually adds value, we went out to some of our customers and said, wait a minute, guys, if we would do this with you, what would it deliver, right? What would be the business case? And we really down to 3 digits behind the decimal separator, right? We figured out, okay, this is going to add so much seconds of the work for a single pick. This is going to remove this entire action in the warehouse, right? And there we created the business case and came up with the value. So it's really, again, what does IFS Labs do? So we take these ideas, we help the organization to make it happen, and we only do that if we can actually prove it.
It's good that you're getting involved in the initial pilots, because a lot of R&D groups just throw it over and say that now it's your problem, your product design problem or whatever, right? So I'm glad you're doing this.
Yeah. And that was my last sort of slide. Conscious of time a little bit.
This is fantastic. Thank you so much. I mean, good to see. You're working on consumable innovation, right? Bite size, and that's usually excellent. But people don't even notice it. They say, fine, don't even sell me. Tell me, I'll just show me the order, and I'll sign it. Right. So.
Yeah, and actually, I like the term consumable innovation. That's one I've never clicked in my mind. So I hear it now. I'm like, oh, that's a good term. I use the term applied innovation quite a bit as well, right? In a sense, like, get away, apply it to your business, and only then it gets add value. And yeah, I like the term consumable innovation in that aspect quite a bit as well. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This has been fantastic.